Today, we aim to find out what the differences are between ancient, veteran, and notable trees, and what exactly the ancient tree inventory is. To help us with these questions, we have May Chamais joining us. May is the Woodland Trust Citizen Science Officer with a focus on the ancient tree inventory. She trains and manages a group of volunteer recorders and verifiers and ensures the smooth running of the ancient tree inventory database. May, if you want to say a little bit more about yourself, that would be lovely. And I shall pass over to you now. Thank you, everybody. Welcome,
Thanks,
May.
Jillian. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all. It's really lovely to see a wide range of participants today and some people who are really involved in the tree world. So hopefully you'll be familiar with some of these concepts already. Otherwise, I'm here to tell you more. So yeah, as Jane said, I'm May Chamais. I am based in Oxford, but I manage the UK nationwide project that is the Ancient Tree Inventory. It's a citizen science project, and we're very busy on this project. And hopefully we can inspire you and tell you a little bit more about what we do so that you might also be interested in recording some ancient and veteran trees in Wales. So a bit about me, I'm a conservation biologist, and I studied ecology. I started off in the tree world, but more to do more in tree planting. So I dealt with very young trees. So this has been an amazing change, and I've been on the project for 2 years now almost. And yeah, I'm going to start sharing my presentation. So please, Jane, let me know if you can see it when I do. Can everybody see that?
Yeah, you need to make it bigger, as in, yeah, press the play.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's perfect. You're good.
great. Thank you so much. So yeah, as I said, welcome. So today we're going to talk about how we can recognize ancient, veteran, and notable trees. So I'll tell you a bit more about these categories and what the difference is between these types of trees that we kind of uh, we've identified and we put on the ancient tree inventory. And I'll tell you more about the purpose of the ancient tree inventory and the and other things. And hopefully you'll see some great photos of trees as well in the meantime. So yeah, again, I am citizen science officer, so I do the day-to-day running of the project, and that includes training from as high up as the Highlands in Scotland to the south west and Wales. And we also train in Northern Ireland as well, and all of England. So it's a busy project. So I'm gonna get straight into what you might already ask yourself, or you might already know, but the main question would be, what is an ancient tree? So a little bit about the life stage model. Ooh, sorry. A little bit about the life stage model. So this is basically a simplified version of a number of different models that have cropped up over the years. And it kind of looks into the tree's life in three main stages. Obviously, these aren't like completely discrete stages. This happens over a long kind of continuous process. And it's not always linear either. But we start to think of a tree as ancient once a tree has reached beyond maturity into the ancient life phase, or the third life phase. So it's basically older in comparison to other trees of the same species, and there are kind of telltale signs of that. The tree will start to kind of do some interesting biological things that we will, like you can see as well, kind of already in this drawing in the image. It just looks a lot more gnarly. Hopefully you can tell that. And not a lot of trees make it to this stage necessarily. Obviously, a lot of trees are under threat, but when they do, it makes it to be a wonderful and extremely kind of ecologically important tree. But as I said, this growth is not really linear. But in order for you to understand kind of like what ancientness means, it's important to see that, the tree undergoes this kind of life stage process. Um, and a little bit more about the oak tree. These are kind of some of the oldest living trees in the UK. So they can reach up to even more than 800 years. We've seen oaks go up to over 1,000 years in the UK. I think some of the oldest ones are, well, one I've seen anyway, that was very old, was in Windsor Park. It was about 1,000 years old. And so they live very long lives. And, this is kind of hard to kind of conceive in human terms. So, and this process takes a long time. But basically, the idea is that once a tree is mature, um, it's basically reached its height, its maximum height, and then over time it starts to invest in what we would. I'll explain a little bit more about some of the processes it invests in, but it starts to develop like a secondary canopy, and it widens a lot more. So it's no longer at its peak height, but it starts to get wider and wider over time, and that's really just those rings that the tree kind of puts around itself every year. But obviously it gets harder to put those rings as the tree gets thicker. So yeah, oak is very old. Usually yews are also a type of tree that grow very old, but there are other species that don't get as old. So like we know that birch trees, for example, probably only make it up to 200 years, among other things. So it depends species by species what we would consider to be ancient. So it's dependent on, various things, but species is a big one. So a little bit more about the ancient tree. We consider uh, trees to be ancient by means of certain number of characteristics. So it usually has a large girth for its species because, as I explained, it takes it kind of puts on a ring around itself. So every year, so that over time, obviously, that means the tree gets very large. So they're typically thicker trees than ones of their species. They have well-developed wood decay characteristics. So decay is a very natural process that the tree undergoes over time. It's due to decay, kind of like fungi that will grow on the tree that will cause things like heart rot. So it will break down the heartwood on the inside of the tree, but that's entirely natural. So nothing to be worried about. There is also such a it's a phenomenon as well called crown retrenchment that will happen. So as I mentioned, like the tree no longer kind of invests in that primary canopy, but it starts to kind of look like it's being weighed down. It looks more squat and lower down. And that's because it's growing more from like lower down than it would from higher up over time. It's typically hollow. Most ancient trees will have hollow, whether you can see it from the outside or you can't, and it's just hollow. Yeah, this is very normal. And other things like holes and water pockets will grow and form. Can everybody still hear me okay?
Yep, we can still hear you fine. Yep.
Okay, thank you. And then one thing they'll also do, interestingly, is show functional units. So what that means is basically they split into different columns, and this is kind of their way of continuing on their lives. So, in a way, when we get older, our skin kind of gets more prune-like, I suppose. Trees just tend to kind of split up into these different columns the older they get. So that's a sign of an ancient tree as well. And they have gnarly bark, so they just have a typically gnarly appearance. So if you see in the upper right, that's the old knobbly, which is an ancient lapsed pollard. And it shows that it is significantly old. And you can see that because it's clearly hollow in the middle, and has lots of gnarly bark. And then there's on the left side you have a large ancient lime discovered by Forestry England, in Yorkshire. So yeah, this clearly shows the functional units, and suckering as well, which is an interesting phenomenon where the tree's branches will reroot and then form a new trunk over time. Um, so yeah, just to kind of exemplify that more with some images, obviously this is a large girth tree. This is an oak tree. I don't know exactly where it is, but yeah, you could probably put this person, you could clone this person maybe 4 or 5 times, and then that's when they'd be able to hold hands around that tree. Uh, and then just an example of what retrenchment looks like. So yeah, again, this is reorganization of the crown to adapt to that older age. So it has that kind of secondary crown, as you can see. And then if you can see the remnants of the primary crown, so that kind of branch that sticks out without any leaves on the top of that tree is what was left of the primary crown. It's lost its leaves, but it's kind of like what we call a stag head or stag headedness, which is again a sign of ancientness. And it's incredibly important. I mean, this is kind of decaying wood. These branches probably are hollowing as you know as the tree ages. So all of that is important and needs to kind of be retained. And I'll explain why in a bit. And then as well, someone said that they worked in a churchyard. So this is a typical tree that you would find in an old churchyard, so a yew tree, and a great example of what you would expect when a tree is hollowing. So yew trees do a good job at really showing hollowing, but it takes a long time for us to be able to see that because they grow to a very great age. I think some yew trees can reach up to 3,000 years old. So but yes, so an example of hollowing. And as I said, it's sometimes visible, but it's not always visible. You can sometimes tell if there's like an opening in the trunk. So look out for that. Yes, but sometimes you can see right through and you can step inside. And I mean, there have been historical accounts of people having tea parties inside of trees. So yeah, and as I said, hollowing is a decay process. Primarily of heartwood, and it's basically a way that the tree continues on its life. So it's fully natural. And finally, just the functional units. So again, as I said, that kind of you can see in this image that you have these separate kind of vertical units that still connect to each other and are still part of the tree. But over time, if you're looking at this tree and it starts hollowing as well and fragmenting. Sometimes if you're looking at a really old tree, you're not really always able to tell if that's part of the same tree or are they two separate trees. So when it gets really, really kind of old and broken down, sometimes it just looks like two separate trees or even a young tree. So trees are amazing in that they're really able to kind of carry on in a way that if we cut off a limb, like we wouldn't be able to regrow it, whereas trees can layer and sucker and reroot and all things like that. So yeah, incredible kind of adaptive features. Um, so we have obviously we talk about the kind of the star of all trees, which is the ancient tree, but we also have other trees that we focus on the ancient tree inventory, and is also part of kind of legislature across different platforms, and are trees that deserve protecting in their own right. So we have the veteran tree. Um, so interestingly, not all countries use this term veteran. Different countries will kind of value trees in different ways and have different names for them. But veteran is a term that's used often in the UK, and it describes a tree that is in its mature life stage, and it has kind of typically a girth within a mature range. It can have a larger girth, but it wouldn't be as kind of big and thick as your ancient tree. But what makes it veteran and what makes it important is that it has that kind of the significant decay features that I mentioned, like rot, so heart rot, so hollowing, and then it'll also do things like hollow in the crown as well, or it will have lots of holes and water pockets. So in this case, as you see in the photo on the left, like the tree is it's an oak tree, so it's still within the kind of range of the mature oak. But for whatever reason in its life, probably due to stress or maybe some kind of like root compaction, it started that hollowing process prematurely. So that can happen. And so even though this tree isn't old, it's still kind of very interesting looking and holds a lot of value as well, ecologically speaking. So these are ecologically important trees because they kind of retain quite a lot of different micro habitats for species. So we don't want to ignore them. Yeah, so they are mentioned, and they are the majority of the trees that we have on the ancient tree inventory as well. So we have around 150,000 of these records, as opposed to kind of 20,000 for ancient trees, which is about 10%, which is what we've modeled and what we've been able to. That's quite normal. You would have a lot more veteran trees than you would ancient. So. As well, there is the notable category, which is mature. So it's a mature tree. There aren't like massive signs of decay. There can be a little bit of decay around the tree, but typically the reason we talk about these trees is because they are distinct in their environment, so they stand out. So either they are kind of a big tree in an amenity area. I mean, I think of my example where I live in Oxford, where if I go into Worcester College, which was my favorite college to visit, there's a beautiful and large oriental plane that kind of um, has a huge crown and you can sit under, and it's kind of the only tree, big, important looking tree in the area, and it really stands out. It really sticks out in the just in when you're looking at it aesthetically. So as well, on the left you have the giant sequoia tree, which was introduced not too long ago, so around the 1800s. And so these trees typically live very long, and their ancient counterparts in California are thousands of years old, but in the UK they're not as old. They're very big, and they do very well in this country, sorry, in Wales and in England and in the UK in general. But not ancient, and not typically veteran, not typically very decayed, but still, very impressive in relation to other trees around it. So yeah, that's just to say that is that's a type of tree that we also have. Yes, so I will move on. I'll just talk a little bit about like the kind of how we value ancient and veteran trees. So what are the types of values that they hold? Because I think, in order for us to kind of appreciate them and record them, we need to know why we why do we need to keep them around? So the first thing is ecological value. So as I already kind of mentioned when I was referring to significant decay, these kind of decay features on ancient and veteran trees have a range of diverse habitats. So you can probably see it a bit in the image on the left, but every kind of unique characteristics of these trees support different life forms. So you have the kind of big hollows, small holes, the water pockets, the buttress roots, the kind of heartwood, hollow branches, deadwood on the ground. So like if you have a branch that's fallen and it will stay on the ground, that's a great place for a number of different species. And mycorrhizal fungi will enjoy the kind of root system of the tree. So really, really important, this kind of ecological habitat, because they are habitats within their own right. So we must not forget that, an individual tree is a habitat to many. And so just a few examples of what live on trees. We have, bats. Bats will roost in trees. So bats typically enjoy ancient trees for their kind of holes. We can see the stag beetle as well. And on the right, you can see this thing called a Mocca's beetle. So that lives in Mocca's Park, which has a dense population of ancient trees and is a highly valuable feature of the site because of the opportunity it provides for these specialist species. So these beetles are very rare and found on just 16% of this part of the park's oak. So what we call kind of saprophilic organisms, which are organisms that are able to, well, depend on decaying wood at one point in their life stage. So, without these trees, some of these species would not be able to exist. So, very important. And so birds as well, bats, insects, among many other things, live on trees. And as well, like, I don't know if people are aware of the different types of fungi, like bracket fungi, and like beefsteak fungus. If you've never seen that, have a Google because it looks like a bleeding steak. When I moved to this country, I was amazed by that. Turns out you can also eat it, but I've not tried that yet. But yeah, so just there is a range of different organisms that rely on these trees. We also have the cultural value of the trees. So in this case, we have a pollarded tree. So they're basically working trees. So the idea is that you cut at the browsing line. So if there's cattle around, they wouldn't be able to reach the lowest branches, and that kind of creates yeah, an interesting looking tree that will kind of start sprouting from that 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 area. You can probably already see it. It's called a bowl. And um, you need this kind of, well, people will cut these branches for different reasons. So it could be for fodder, it can be for firewood. And in the past, in the UK, for example, in I think it was in the southeast, southwest areas of England, a lot of beech trees were cut as means of getting kind of wood to build ships with. So we have a large collection of ancient beech trees that are often found, well, they are found around the area of London, that have lived a long time because of this practice. So sometimes our like human influences will change a tree's form and allow it to kind of live longer, in this case. So in the case of pollarded trees. Um, and an example that is a lot closer by, the winner of the Tree of the Year competition in 2023. This is a sweet chestnut tree in Wrexham, and it's 484 years old. It's found in Acton Park, and it stood since the reign of Queen Elizabeth I. And it weathered many storms and survived being pillaged for firewood in the 1940s post-war Britain. So, it has this kind of like historic, cultural tie to it, in that, you can tie it to events and uh, we have other things like trees that provide kind of like wishing trees. So people will tie ribbons around trees. Um, like school children will do that, or you have trees that are related to arts. Like you'll find certain trees in album covers and books. So like, for example, there's a group of trees called the Fraternal Four, which I think were either in William Wordsworth's work, or he was inspired by them. So we're always inspired by trees, and it comes out in our music, literature, and art. And finally, a bit about like valuing trees based on their history. They live for a very long time, so they accompany not just us, but our ancestors as well. This is a very famous tree, if not maybe the most famous oak tree there is, the major oak, which is found in Sherwood Forest. I think someone works in Sherwood. I think I saw that in the chat. And it's linked to mythology and Robin Hood. And if you see here, there's like a very historical image of Victorian tree workers installing braces on this tree. So hence why it has the braces. So lots of really great old images emerging from the 1920s next to this tree. And as well, we have a sweet chestnut tree that appeared in a painting approximately 250 years ago. This is the Totworth chestnut. It's an ancient tree, and even back then it looked ancient. So I wonder what it looks like now. But yeah, this kind of watercolor image is found in the British Museum, and this is what it looks like today. So it's over 12 meters thick in its girth, and so it still stands today. But obviously, it looks a lot more kind of decayed. But yes, these are very, very old trees sometimes. So we're gonna swing into talking more about the ancient tree inventory, or we say ATI because ancient tree inventory is a mouthful, but I'll tell you a little bit more about the project and what we do. Okay. Um, so the ancient tree inventory is a project that emerged 20 years ago. It was started as the Ancient Tree Hunt, which was a partner project with the Tree Register of the Great British Isles and the Ancient Tree Forum, which are other two other charities in the UK. One deals with more kind of champion trees, so thick and very tall trees, and the other is very well renowned for its work with ancient trees. And the goal at the time was to find 100,000 ancient trees. They managed to do that in 2006. Oh, sorry, no. They achieved the 100,000 trees mark in 2011. The project started in 2006. And since then, the project was absorbed by the Woodland Trust as a long-term citizen science project. So now it's like a living database, and it's gone through different iterations. But the idea is that it's a database that continues to expand day by day. We add more and more trees on it every day, and we aim to find and record ancient, veteran, and notable trees in the UK. So currently we're at about 230,000 records, which is I think it's slightly more now, actually. So how does that look? So it's basically a map with some pins on it. But when you click into the pins, you have tree records. So that captures quite a lot of information about individual trees. Um, so when a tree is recorded, which can be done by anyone, hence why it's a citizen science project, so long as you register, you can take photos of the tree, you can add all sorts of information about the tree, and then a volunteer verifier. So we have about 170 of those in UK wide that we train. So they're kind of specialized volunteers that are kind of specialized in identifying ancient and veteran trees and using the ATI. They then visit the tree to check the data, make sure it's accurate. They might add some more photos or anything like that. And then they will give it a category. So it will be either ancient, veteran, notable, or they'll remove the tree because we're only interested in, well, mostly ancient and veteran trees. So that is how it works. And then once the verifier verifies the record, it then gets updated online and it shows publicly on the map. So if you've ever been on the ATI, you'll see a lot of pins, and that will have been the verified record. So different colors show different types, the different categories. So orange is for ancient, green is for veteran, and purple is for notable. Um, so, as I mentioned, we have different roles on the ATI. So, as I said, you can be a recorder, which hopefully some of you have recorded for the ancient tree inventory. You might be interested in being a verifier, so in which case we train people to it's quite a long training. It takes about 4 weeks, where we kind of meet every week and we have homework and things. And that will kind of empower you to be able to go out and visit trees and verify them. And then we have lead verifiers. So these are people that tend to kind of take on a larger role in that they do more organizing, or they might serve as kind of a first point of contact for verifiers in their area, because we kind of split the networks into sub networks, kind of. So there is a Wales network as well that is budding and growing. We recently we have about 10 new Wales verifiers. So yeah, hopefully that will lead to a lot more records being verified in Wales, because we have a lot of records in Wales. We just didn't have a lot of verifiers historically. So, and just to say, if you are interested in that, we do it once a year. So you will, it's already happened. You'll have to apply next year in the spring, but it's well worth it, I think. And so, what is the purpose? Why do we need the ancient tree inventory? What's the idea behind kind of having this tool? So that's what it is. First and foremost, it acts as a conservation tool. So it really helps to kind of keep track of the numbers of these ancient and veteran trees, their species, their size and age, their distribution, their change over time. For example, if we record a tree in 2006 and then it gets it it gets felled.
I got some in
Oh,
my bag.
it gets felled by a storm or something, we'd like to know the rate of loss of some of these trees. So that's important, and it helps to kind of inform environmental management as well. It helps with site management plans. So in this case, we have two kind of ancient trees next to each other, and there's a bike path running between them. So is that smart? Is that kind of compacting the roots of these trees? You know, we can, by knowing where these trees are, we can make these kind of decisions. And they inform things like infrastructure and utilities and planning applications as well. So a bit about planning applications and tree protection. At the moment, there isn't kind of like a official legal protection for ancient and veteran trees. The closest we have is the Tree Preservation Order, but I should say that that isn't granted to all ancient and veteran trees. And it only applies to amenity residential areas. So you wouldn't find this typically on someone's private land. And although it can help to keep the tree safe, the council can revoke it, and in which case the tree could still get felled. We also have the National Planning Policy Framework, which only applies to planning applications. So planning permissions might be required to protect trees. But the kind of national planning policy framework doesn't really have very conclusive or decisive language. So oftentimes people, well, development and companies will use that in their favor, and they might kind of undermine the tree or fail to recognize it as veteran, for example, and then the felling will happen. So this is really bad. We need to be able to protect these trees. So the ancient tree inventory is kind of the most comprehensive tool in knowing where they are, and at least in that way we can kind of keep track of any of these trees that get felled or removed. We also want to kind of value these trees. So something like this is not really acceptable. So, you know, at least by having them documented and documenting this kind of evidence somewhere, you know, at least we can, well, hopefully when the day comes that we have this legal protection that we work towards at the Woodland Trust, we can get to a place where this no longer happens, or at least people are held accountable for damaging these extremely special trees. So yeah, so we do our bit in raising awareness and campaigning. So there is a campaigning team within the Woodland Trust, and they work on around 900 applications at any one given time, planning applications. So they oppose them, especially ones that affect ancient and veteran trees, as well as ancient woodland. So in the case on the left, you have aldermaston, which is an ancient wood pasture, which is actually a habitat protected in the national planning by the National Planning Policy Framework. And this planning application was submitted, which would have cut through kind of this very important patch of ancient trees that you can see. But it failed to recognize those trees. So luckily with the ATI, the campaigning team was able to identify that there were ancient trees there, and the planning application was refused on the grounds of the fact that it's an irreplaceable habitat, which is mentioned in the National Planning Policy Framework. So yes, so, and as well, I should say there was the grassland between the trees was also like a protected habitat because of the ancient soils. So it's ancient woodland as well. And then on this next to that, you see an ancient tree in Reading, which was in someone's back garden. And this tree was saved thanks to the campaigning team because they had gotten a lot of people to kind of call in and complain to the local council in Reading because this tree was planned to be felled. And it's a very old tree and it has kind of historical roots in that it was a parliamentary post, I think, in World War I. So luckily there were enough people that complained about this, and so the application was withdrawn, luckily, so the tree was saved. But this can happen anytime, and without anyone's supervision. So it's critical that we kind of have evidence of these trees. As well, we do quite a lot of research using the ATI's data. So Victoria Nolan, who is a PhD candidate in Nottingham University, modeled ancient and veteran trees in order to see whether to predict how many more there were. That she did that using targeted surveys and other conservation measures, and was able to find that, in fact, we'd only found about 10% of ancient and veteran trees so far on the ATI, and there was predicted 1 million in total in England. So this would be really interesting to kind of delve into and look at in Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland as well. Unfortunately, the data isn't as complete in those areas as it is in England. It's very easy to find ancient oaks in England, especially in the south. It gets a lot harder as you go higher up in uplands and other areas. And then we also had this kind of next to that, the Scatter project, which was I think finished last year, and it was a project done by people at UCL, so postgraduate researchers. They were quantifying carbon content of ancient trees using LiDAR scanning, so laser. And they used the ATI to locate a group of ancient trees. And the good thing about this is it kind of helped to 3D model these trees as well. So if you look into the Scatter project, you'll be able to find some really cool 3D videos of these trees. And the idea is to kind of understand how carbon is stored in these kind of more burly and gnarly trees, because it's not the same, you wouldn't calculate that the same way you would a mature tree, which has a lot more of a kind of continuous trunk as you go up the tree. And other publications, so things like Ancient Oak, written by Alios Farion. So just to pivot again, so if you are interested in recording trees, please go to the ATI website. You'll be able to add a tree so long as you sign up. So you need to register. And there are a lot of different kind of tools and resources that you can find on there. So videos, there's a recording guide, which I would really recommend if you're starting out, because it kind of goes through all the things that we record for each tree. And you can also print like a printable tree recording form, because I would say the website is good, but it needs kind of good, stable internet connection. So it's always best to go out probably with a pen and paper. That often works best. And so what do we actually record? So we have kind of what we would say is essential information. So the location of the tree, so the grid reference. You can use a number of apps to kind of help you locate where you are. So like OS Maps is a good one. What 3 words as well. So we need the genus and species of the tree, the girth. So typically you would use a measuring tape to go around the tree. And that really helps because it kind of helps you walk around the tree and notice it better and kind of observe it and see more of it than you would if you just stood in one place. But you can also estimate the girth if you don't have a tape measure, or you're on private land and you can't actually get to the tree. And hence why we also use public and private accessibility information as well. Is it next to a public footpath? Is it actually not visible from a public footpath? In which case, how did you find the tree? So this would help our verifiers kind of get to the tree to verify it. And then, of course, photos are extremely important. So as many photos as possible, because that helps with kind of verifying the tree as well. And this is additional, but I would say it's essential as well. So the tree form, we don't have time to go into that very much, but there is some resources. There are some resources on it on the website. But things like I mentioned pollarding. A tree can be a pollard as a tree form, but among other things. A tree condition, so that's very important. It's basically saying how much deadwood is on and around the tree. Is it hollowing? So these are all really important parts of completing the assessment. And then things like epiphytes, fungi, and evidence of bats and invertebrates. So, is there fungi growing on it? Is there lichen? Do you see any bat holes? That's quite hard to identify, but if you see things like that, please do record it. So I'm gonna stop talking actually because I think I've gone, well, I don't think we're still okay with time, but I wanted to do a little bit of a quiz with everybody. So you've heard me talk a lot at you about the 3 categories of trees. So now it's your turn to tell me what you think the tree is. So if you can guess what the category is. So I'll show you 4 pictures. And then I think maybe Jane will probably help me with this because I can't see the chat. So you might need to read out the answers to me,
Yeah,
Jane.
that's fine. Mhm.
Thanks. But I'll do I'll do the first picture. All right. And then I'll tell you immediately. Oh, no. Sorry. Oh, trigger fingers, sorry. No worries. That was an ancient tree, but I'll explain why. I'll just go back there. We have a few more guesses, so but yeah, the reason it's an ancient tree is because it's a very old pollard, and that's often a sign that that's quite an old tree. It's also very fragmented, so it looks like it has already hollowed out, and part of the trunk is already kind of decayed away. So it's small, but it's what you would.
So that's one tree that's
Yes.
hollowed and it looks like 3.
It looks like 3 trees. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. 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 So that's an ancient, I think it's a hollow ash pollard in the Cotswolds. Okay. I will be careful next time I press. Okay. Okay. Hopefully. Okay. So please give me your suggestions for this tree. Is it ancient? Is it veteran? Or is it notable?
Veteran, I think most people are going for.
Okay. Is
Do you
that
want to
everyone's?
say why? Do you want people to say what? Or 2 people said notable now. Do people
All
want to
right.
give their reasons why they think that? Yeah, it's a mix between notable and veteran.
I can see why people would think that they would swing with between the 2 of those. It is a veteran tree. So yay, veteran. I mean, you wouldn't be wrong just based on the photographic evidence at least that this could be a notable. But the reason I'll say that it is a veteran is, if I could just go back to it, is if you can kind of see it's kind of invested a little bit in that secondary crown. It's got deadwood a bit as well in the crown. I don't know if you can see that in that kind of upper image, but it does have kind of the stag-headedness appearance, but it's on its
Yes.
way there. So it's not ancient and certainly not notable because it does also have a bit of it's got a girth to it as well. So yeah, I mean I think that was a tricky one, guys, and I'm sorry about that. But well done for those of you who said veteran. And then moving on, yeah, our third tree. Any minute now. Yeah, what do we think?
Ancient.
Ancient, okay.
Any other guesses? We've got one ancient. Ancient as it's fragmented.
Okay.
Someone's got veteran, doesn't look very old. Ancient split trunk, veteran, veteran.
So this one, I've tricked you. Um, it is a notable tree. The reason for its splitness is I think, well, I don't entirely remember, but it has been split, but it's not as a result of hollowing. Sorry, that's that's a bit misleading. But the idea is that the crown has kind of stayed the same. It's mature, and it would have split down either because I think there's been maybe some storm damage or something, but I want you to kind of look at the, kind of the crown and to be honest, this wasn't a fair one. You know what? For those of
Do you
you
know
who have
what?
said,
I think what you're demonstrating is the complexity of it,
yeah,
and you need to look at the multiple different features in order to be able to make the
yes,
final assumption. So I think it is a good one to show just how tricky it is and how careful you have to be when,
yes.
rather than just jumping to
You need to
conclusions.
kind of build that evidence a little bit.
Yeah.
So if the trunk is split, why might it be split? Is it because it was so girthy that it might have just split into two? You might want to take into consideration the tree form. So if it's kind of two, if it's like a multi-stem, maybe that might have happened. So there's quite a lot to consider there. Um, but I would say for the most part, if you're looking for signs of ancient or veteran, definitely have a look at, what you would see as significant decay. So that hollowing, the kind of retrenchment, the stag-headedness, the hollowed branches, a lot of those, if you see a lot of that, like a lot of deadwood in the
So
crown.
Alice has commented it seemed to have a large girth, which she thinks would only come with age.
Yeah, so I think that she might be right. It was put down as a notable, but yeah, upon inspection, you're right. It does look like it has a bigger girth. In which case, if it did, like if it had, say, a girth of over 4 meters, you would start to go into that veteran category. So have a look at the website because for each species there is a bit of more guidance around like girth sizes as potential indicators. You shouldn't go only based on girth. You should look at the kind of other features of the tree. But yeah, I think that's fair. Apologies for the confusing tree. I thought I was being, smart with that, but it's a bit confusing. But this is a kind of good exercise in when you have trees that are a bit on the cusp or in bet you're kind of in between. When you're not sure, always try to kind of downgrade the category. I mean, I say downgrade, it's not like veterans are better than ancients or anything, but um, you want enough kind of evidence to show. So, I mean, in this case, right, this is a tree in Bradgate Park in Loughborough. What do people think?
Ancient. Do
Yeah,
you want to give reasons why you think it's ancient, people? Just so we can see how hollowed out. Yeah.
yeah. Hollow,
Gnarly,
gnarly, yeah, correct.
collapsed crown,
Yeah, yeah,
girth hollowed and gnarly, signs of decay,
yep. Good, good. Um, yeah,
retrenched.
retrenched, yes.
Must be ancient, big girth, hollow, bare branches.
Yeah, yeah. So the ancients are quite easy to find because they tend to be the more kind of intense looking trees. So in this case, yeah, this is an ancient oak tree in Bradgate Park. I think it might be the oldest one there. So maybe about 800 to 900 years old potentially. Although it is very hard to kind of guess the age of these trees because typically you would core a tree and count the rings. You can't really do that for these trees because they lose the ring count through the hollowing process. So it's quite hard. Um, so yeah, so I'm going to stop there. Hopefully that's given you some food for thought and a curiosity to um, to uh, to explore. I think I'll hand over now to Jane because you have some in-person training events coming up, which is
We
exciting.
do. Yep. So I'm just going to quickly pop these into the chat for you. So we got one on the 9th in Egloisfach. That's currently fully booked, but we can put you on a waiting list. That's on the 9th. The one on the 17th is in Mainfrogus at Plas Tannabuch, just near Blaenau Festiniog. So that one shouldn't have, unless there's people have booked on already because they follow my Eventbrite page, which I know a few of you do. So some spaces may have gone, but I haven't actually advertised that one yet. So if you want to go to that one, get on it soon, because as soon as I put out on the mailing list, they usually go quite quickly. So that's that as far as the trading events are concerned. Sorry, I'm just trying to
Sorry,
Sarah,
I just
that's what I'm just trying to see the questions. There's another question popped up. Sarah, yeah, we don't mind where you are. You're welcome to attend. Yes, so going back to the questions, because we have got some questions that were asked. But my mouse it's like the slowest mouse in the world. I think I need to get a new one. I'm trying to scroll back up. There were a few questions. How many saprophytic organisms rely on British native trees? I did give this a quick Google if you don't know off the top of your head, May.
or I don't, sorry.
That's okay. I'll answer that one then. So, a large number of saprophytic, if I'm pronouncing it right, sporosthetic, I'm not sure. Organisms rely on British native trees. Some species are entirely dependent on specific trees, like oaks. For example, the oak can support a massive 2,300 different species, including 326 that solely rely on them themselves. So that answers that question for you in part.
Oh, thank
There
you.
are That's okay. There are other species which have very species that completely rely on them as well. But if you give it a Google, there's quite a lot of information out there and on the Coed Cadw pages as well. The next question was, how is the major oak? I think Laura answered that a little bit in the chat, but I don't know if you know any more, particularly with that tree.
I think I just know that it's struggling as well, and that I think it's probably due to like different stressors. Although yeah, I think Laura answered that. Oh yeah, so compaction, yes, and then extreme drought events as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's looking poorly, but hopefully it makes
Um,
it.
Yeah, okay. One of the other things which no one's actually asked the question, but funnily enough, Laura's just mentioned in the comments, which I noted to bring up as well. Being in Wales, we have quite a lot of trees that grow on high ground. So Brian, who does some of the training for us in Wales, obviously is more specialised to where we are, and he lives in the mountains. So he quite often says in his training about the differences of ancient features and notable features as you go up in altitude. So I don't know if you want to quickly mention something about how trees look different when they're higher up as
Yeah,
features,
so
perhaps.
there is evidence of like that those features being less noticeable in with increasing elevation. I think typically because they're slower growing. So what you would expect as like in good kind of soil conditions to produce like these kind of bigger, large girth trees doesn't apply as much to upland areas. But you will still see signs. So you'll see the hollowing, you'll see like the lichen and things growing on the tree. The only thing I would say is probably what's trickier to identify, and we still haven't really made much guidance around this really. So there's work to do around that. But like the coniferous trees, so if you go into certain areas of Scotland, there will be like Scots pine trees that are hundreds of years old, but they wouldn't necessarily look it because they don't have those kind of typical telltale signs of ancient and veteranness. So that's yet to be kind of we don't have that much scientific evidence to support, identifying these trees a lot easier, but a lot easier, sorry. But with upland trees, typically if you see like your kind of hawthorn trees or alder or I'm trying to think of like smaller girth trees typically, you would still be able to see that kind of hollowing happening in the branches, in the trunk. Oh, thank you, Beth, and thanks for joining. So
Yeah,
yeah,
thanks for
hopefully
that.
hopefully that answers it. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it is trickier. It's a lot trickier when you go into
Yeah.
upland areas.
I just thought I'd mention it because obviously being in Wales, particularly where we're looking at having the training, it is a little bit different. So another question from Damien. At what point would you consider intervening in a veteran hollow tree by retrenchment pruning to avoid catastrophic failure resulting in the loss of the tree?
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that question. I think because we don't give advice on interventions, and I don't think I could say that considering I'm not like I don't have like an arboricultural qualification, but
So maybe
um
it's a question for an arboriculturalist rather than yourself.
yeah,
So
I'd
okay,
say
sorry
so.
about that,
Sorry.
Damien. That's all right. I think the other ones are more sort of technical, as in like the training itself. I'm going to stop recording now.